This episode contains mature themes and includes narration produced using AI voice technology. Listener discretion is advised. The Sierra Nevada can feel endless at night. In February, the snow muffles every sound, the trees close in, and the cold presses against your skin until it's hard to breathe. On one of those nights in 1978, 5 men drove into that darkness and never came home. Their car was found abandoned in the wilderness, doors unlocked, snacks left behind, footprints vanishing into the snow. Months later, the mountains gave up only part of their secret. 4 bodies were recovered. 1 man was never seen again. This is the mystery of the Yuba County Five. Welcome to 3 Theories, the podcast where we uncover the great mysteries of the world. I'm Elena Hart, your guide on this journey through the unknown. Each episode will examine unsolved cases, paranormal phenomena, and historical and natural mysteries, and explore 3 compelling theories to help you decide. What do you believe? On February 24th, 1978, 5 friends set out for a simple night together. 25-year-old Gary Mathias, 30-year-old Jack Madruga, 29-year-old Bill Sterling, 32-year-old Ted Weir, and 24-year-old Jack Hewitt. Each lived in Yuba or Marysville, California, towns where routines were familiar and lives were steady. All 5 men were described as good-natured, close-knit, and devoted to one another. They shared not just friendship, but an eagerness for activities like sports and games, often joining events arranged through community programs. That evening, they climbed into Jack Madruga's turquoise and white Mercury Montego. It was a Friday, the air sharp with winter chill, and the group was brimming with anticipation. They were headed north 50 miles away to California State University, Chico, to watch a college basketball game. The night was filled with excitement. The team they supported had won, and afterward, the men stopped at Bear's Market to grab sodas, pies, and snacks for the ride home. The cashier remembered them. They were cheerful, laughing, very much alive in that moment. What happened next has never been explained. Sometime after leaving Chico, the Mercury left the main road and began climbing into the Sierra Nevada. The path they took wasn't on the way home. In fact, it led them in the opposite direction, into Plumas National Forest, into roads that wound higher into mountains where snowstorms had begun to lay down heavy sheets of ice and silence. 2 days later, on February 26th, a forest ranger found the Montego abandoned. It sat stuck in the snow on a deserted road near Oroville, 70 miles away from the men's homes. Its location baffled investigators. None of the men had any reason to be there. The car itself was in puzzling condition. It wasn't damaged, and it hadn't run out of gas. The doors were unlocked, the windows rolled down slightly. The tires had sunk into snow, but experts later noted that 5 men easily could have pushed it free. The engine worked, the heater worked, and there was enough fuel to run it for hours. Inside were candy wrappers and empty cartons, the remnants of their late-night stop at the market. Their lives had ended sometime after that store visit, and the Montego was the first cryptic marker on the trail. Then the mountains went quiet again. Not long after the car was found, another piece of the puzzle surfaced, this one stranger than most. On the very night the men vanished, a man driving through the mountains suffered a heart attack. Stranded on the roadside, he claimed he saw 2 vehicles pull up behind him. Inside one of them, he swore, sat a group of men matching the 5. In the other, a woman with a baby. He later recalled the scene with trembling certainty. The men seemed confused, almost dazed, and the moment passed like a fragment from a nightmare. By the time help arrived, both cars were gone, leaving behind only questions. Search teams combed the forest, but found no trace of the men. Helicopters hovered above the endless trees. Dogs strained at leashes. Families pleaded for answers. But the forest stayed silent, and the winter snow buried its secrets. It wasn't until June, when the thaw came, that the Sierra began to speak. First, a group of motorcyclists stumbled upon a battered Forest Service trailer, 19 miles from where the Montego had been left. The trailer's front window was broken, the interior cluttered, and inside, stretched across a bed, was the body of 32-year-old Ted Weir. The sight chilled investigators. Ted had survived longer than the others, perhaps as long as 3 months after the group disappeared. His beard had grown out inches, his body wasted away by nearly 100 pounds. Frostbite gnawed at his feet. He had wrapped himself in layers of sheets and bedding, as if desperately trying to hold in warmth. But what surrounded him was even stranger. In the cupboards of the trailer were shelves stacked with canned food, enough to last the men a year. Matches and paperback books littered the space, useful for fire. Outside was a propane tank that could have heated the entire cabin. None of it had been touched. Ted had died slowly, alone, surrounded by salvation he never used. The questions multiplied. Why had no one lit a fire? Why hadn't they opened the cans? Who had broken the window to enter the trailer? And why had they stopped there, deep in the woods? Weeks later, more gruesome discoveries followed. Several miles from the trailer, searchers found the skeletal remains of Madruga and Sterling. Their bones lay scattered, gnawed by animals, their lives extinguished by the unforgiving cold. A short distance away, the remains of Hewitt were found, fragments of bone and scraps of clothing strewn among the brush. The horror was nearly complete, but one man was still unaccounted for. Gary Mathias, the 25-year-old Army veteran and the only one of the group who lived with schizophrenia, was gone. His shoes were found inside the trailer, leading many to believe he had left barefoot. Yet his body was never recovered. Not then. Not ever. 47 years later, the earth has never given him back. This detail left investigators with an even deeper unease. Why would Gary leave his shoes behind? Why was Ted alone in the trailer, starved to death despite ample food? Why had the others died spread out in the wilderness, far from both the car and the shelter? The Sierra Nevada seemed to laugh at every logical answer. Family members described the torment of that winter and summer, waiting, watching searchers carry body bags out of the woods, clinging to hope that 1 or 2 might still be alive. Each discovery brought grief and confusion, but never closure. Even the condition of the Montego was unsettling. Police noted that the car had been driven high into the mountains on roads rough enough that most people would hesitate to take them in daylight, let alone at night. But the car showed no scratches, dents, or undercarriage damage. Whoever drove it had navigated those treacherous roads with eerie precision. The night of February the 24th still hangs like a shroud over Yuba County. Some believe the men were simply lost, their decisions fatally flawed in the cold. Others whispered darker explanations, that they were chased, misled, or met something sinister in the wilderness. But the physical evidence, the untouched food, the silence of the trailer, and the missing body of Gary Mathias leave the story without resolution. 5 men went into the Sierra Nevada. 4 came back in pieces, and 1, to this day, has never come back at all. The most widely accepted explanation is also the simplest. The men simply lost their way. After the Chico basketball game, perhaps in the confusion of night driving, Jack Madruga, the only one with a license, took a wrong turn. Instead of heading south toward Yuba City, the Mercury Montego crept east into the foothills and then higher into the Sierra Nevada. The mountain roads in February were a death trap. Snow fell in heavy curtains, muffling sound and swallowing visibility. The Montego had no chains on its tires, no 4-wheel drive. Yet it climbed mile after mile into the forest, until the road narrowed and the snow deepened. At some point, the tires spun out, sinking into drifts. The car was left idling, still in good condition, but going no farther. According to this theory, the 5 men panicked. Stranded in the snow, miles from civilization, with temperatures dropping into the 20s, they made a fatal choice: to leave the safety of the car. Experts later said the Montego could have provided shelter for hours, even days, if they had simply stayed. But for reasons no one fully understands, they stepped out into the storm. The footprints left in the snow suggested a group moving together at first, trudging deeper into the wilderness. Why not walk back down the road toward Chico, toward help? Investigators speculated that in the darkness, surrounded by endless trees and white silence, the men became disoriented. Every direction looked the same. Every breath burned their lungs. The only sound was snow crunching beneath their shoes. And then nothing. Miles away, they stumbled upon the trailer. By then, some had already collapsed, succumbing to frostbite and exhaustion, but Ted Weir made it inside. There he lived for weeks, maybe months. Yet even in shelter, with food and matches within arm's reach, he slowly starved to death. His friends lay scattered in the forest, their bodies gnawed by animals, their faces lost to time. Supporters of the accident theory point to the witness who swore he saw the men that night. If the account is true, it suggests they were still alive after abandoning their car, perhaps confused or following the wrong people in their desperate search for warmth. But if they were simply lost, why were they seen with strangers? And why didn't those strangers come forward when the men's bodies were discovered? The lost and disoriented theory fits the facts, but uneasily. Jack Madruga was known to be cautious, unlikely to drive a road he didn't know. The car showed no damage, as if someone had navigated those mountain roads with confidence. And why did Ted die without touching the canned food or lighting the propane stove? Why did Gary's body never appear, despite exhaustive searches? If it was just a matter of being lost, why does every detail feel so wrong? Some investigators believe the answer lies not in chance, but in the men themselves. In particular, one man whose presence may have changed everything: Gary Mathias. If the Yuba County Five had a leader, it was Gary Mathias. At 25, he was different from the others. While his 4 friends lived with mild intellectual disabilities and relied heavily on their families, Gary was an Army veteran, described as street smart, quick-witted, and charismatic. He was also volatile. Gary had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, a condition he managed with medication. When he took his pills, those who knew him said he was stable. When he didn't, he could be unpredictable. Gary was fiercely close to the group, but some investigators have wondered if it was his influence that drew them into the mountains that night. Did Gary convince them to leave the safety of the highway, steering them down the narrow road into the forest? Did his illness play a role, warping the night into something darker? The car's location remains one of the strangest aspects of the case. Jack Madruga, the driver, was known to be careful. He hated back roads and avoided driving in poor conditions. Yet the Mercury Montego had been driven 70 miles out of the way, up dangerous mountain passes, with no signs of hesitation. Some have speculated that Jack may not have been making the decisions alone. Perhaps Gary insisted they take that route. Perhaps the others, loyal and trusting, followed without question. Once the car was stuck, the choices only grew stranger. Instead of staying put, the group pushed forward into the wilderness. The footprints showed them moving together, trudging miles into the snowbound woods. But at some point, they separated. Some died in the open, succumbing to the elements. One ended up in the trailer, wasting away while food and warmth surrounded him. And Gary vanished entirely. Inside the trailer, investigators found his sneakers, left behind. That detail unsettled many. Had he been there with Ted, helping him cling to life, before leaving barefoot into the snow? Or did he leave earlier, never entering the trailer at all? Without his body, there are no answers. But the absence speaks louder than anything else. Then there's the man who suffered a heart attack on that same mountain road. He claimed he saw the 5 men alive that night, sitting silently in a car with strangers, a woman and a baby. To some, it points to Gary's influence. Maybe he convinced the others to follow these people, or maybe he trusted them himself. But the image lingers. 5 men, dazed and quiet, as though they were no longer making choices of their own. Gary's mother believed her son survived longer than the others. For years, she held on to the hope that he was still out there, alive but changed, wandering far from Yuba. Others whispered darker possibilities, that he turned on his friends or abandoned them in their final hours. The human mind under strain can be a terrifying force. This theory lingers because it explains what others cannot. The misplaced car, the decision to leave it, the scatter of bodies, the missing 5th man. All of it could trace back to Gary Mathias, the one friend whose story remains unfinished. But even if Gary was the key, another question haunts the case. Were the men alone in those mountains at all? Or was someone, or something, driving them deeper into the snow? There is another theory, one that pulls the case out of the realm of tragic accident and into something far darker. Some investigators and locals have long suspected that the Yuba County Five were not alone that night. The idea is simple, but chilling. Someone lured them into the mountains, or forced them off the highway, and what followed was not confusion or misjudgment, but cruelty. The foothills of the Sierra Nevada were not empty in 1978. That winter, marijuana growers were known to operate in the woods. Outlaws and drifters passed through. Hunters and survivalists set up isolated camps, far from prying eyes. If the 5 men stumbled onto the wrong property or crossed paths with the wrong group, the outcome could have been deadly. The signs are subtle, but unsettling. The car was found in good condition, with no attempts to free it from the snow. Why would all 5 men walk away at once, unless they felt they had no choice? The footprints showed they stuck together for miles, as if herded. Later, their bodies turned up in different places, but not in ways that made sense for simple survival. Ted died wasting away in the trailer, despite food and blankets within reach. Others lay scattered in the woods, some with gruesome evidence of animal activity. And Gary Mathias, the one man who might have explained it all, vanished without a trace. Then there's the trailer itself, found 20 miles from the abandoned car, stocked with food and fuel, but eerily untouched. The idea that Ted survived for months, only to starve in a place filled with provisions, feels almost too cruel to be chance. Some investigators believe the group was kept there, prevented from eating or leaving freely, tortured by neglect, or worse. Locals whispered about violence in the mountains, stories of strangers who vanished after crossing the wrong people. One family even claimed to have seen the men at a general store the night they disappeared, looking frightened, as if someone was watching them. The report was never confirmed, but it lingers, like a half-glimpsed shadow in the trees. The scariest possibility is that they weren't lost at all, that they were taken, led off the road, driven deeper and deeper until their strength failed. The snow muffling their cries, the pines swallowing their footprints. Someone could have been with them every step of the way, ensuring none of them returned to tell the truth. And if foul play was involved, Gary's disappearance takes on an even darker meaning. Was he the only one who escaped, running barefoot into the trees, never seen again? Or was he silenced, his body hidden so completely it has never been found? The wilderness is vast. So are the ways people can vanish when someone doesn't want them to be found. And then there's the darkest interpretation. The man with the heart attack swore he saw not only the 5, but also a couple and a baby. What were strangers with an infant doing on a desolate mountain road that night? Some believe it was no coincidence at all, but a trap. A lure designed to make the men stop, to lower their guard. If that account is true, it suggests they weren't just lost. They were being led. What makes this theory so terrifying is its plausibility. We expect wilderness to be dangerous, but not malicious. Yet the Sierra Nevada, under cover of snow and silence, could have been a hunting ground that night. If someone was out there watching, guiding, and hurting, then the Yuba County Five were victims not of the cold, but of something much colder: human cruelty. The question that will never go away: if it was foul play, who were they? And how did they disappear so completely, leaving behind only bones, footprints, and silence? Thank you for joining us on this episode of 3 Theories. The disappearance of the Yuba County Five remains one of the most haunting mysteries in American history. 5 young men set out for a basketball game on a crisp February evening, and only 4 were ever found, scattered like fragments across the frozen wilderness. Were they simply lost, their fate sealed by confusion, exhaustion, and the merciless cold? Were they terrified into flight by something far more sinister, caught in a web of foul play deep in the pines? Or was there something stranger at work, a shadow in the wilderness that no investigation could ever explain? What do you believe? We want to hear your thoughts and theories. Share them with us on social media and join the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more curious minds like yours and continue to explore the world's greatest mysteries. Join us next time as we uncover another intriguing case and present 3 more theories for you to consider. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.